All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make sure. Hi, my name is Elise Trudell-Cedeno, and I currently hold a master's from the Teachers College of Columbia University, and I am currently pursuing my second master's in language and literature at Signum University. Huzzah. I am happy to share the wonders of Signum simply because it is a great way to access fantasy, Tolkien studies, and everything that has to do with the genre that we love so much. But this talk, this paper was born out of a master's level Potter course that I took at Signum, and it is specifically on the teaching practices at Hogwarts. And I want to begin simply by setting the frame a little bit. And who hasn't longed to change their desk into a pig with Professor McGonagall? Or make a toad fly in Professor Flitwick's class? The content of these courses are part of the magic that happens with Harry Potter. It's not just the fact that magic happens, it's you get to learn this magic with Harry and you get to learn this magic with the students. It's also that students can see in those professors reflections of their own teachers. And those of you who are high school students, college students, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. While students may despise spelling drills and multiplications tables, I was part of the generation that grew up with drill and kill. They grudgingly accept the lessons that their teachers give them because they know that the teacher has worked hard for those lessons and to share what they know. And I can imagine very few of us can say there is not at least one teacher who has directly influenced our lives and how we think and how we feel. And it is that love, that unshaking loyalty towards students that makes teachers so important, that keeps teachers going even when the politics of teaching becomes too unbearable. It's that love and loyalty that we see in my examples that I'm going to give today in McGonagall, Flitwick, even Snape, a little bit, among others, with which students and teachers alike can connect with so strongly. Students read Harry Potter with a very sympathetic lens towards Harry and his friends as they envision them struggling with homework and sweating over cauldrons of potions that are smoking rather than steaming. Teachers, on the other hand, can read Harry Potter as a model and to learn how to be better teachers by observing their practices and the lessons that they teach. Whether it's in the classroom or in Dumbledore's office, specific teaching practices and learning models are used to allow room for growth in each of the students at Hogwarts. The pedagogical model that I examined in this particular paper is known as active learning. And I also would like to add on the addendum that it's not only active learning, but also question-based practices that gives Hogwarts students room to critically examine their own learning. It's not just about practicing spells and potions, it's about discovering how the potions and spells work and learning to experiment with them. Good teachers at Hogwarts distance themselves from direct instruction, which is, I am teacher, you are student, you listen to me. They distance themselves from direct instruction approaches to the learning process and act as facilitators rather than directors of the students' learning and prefer a practical life experience. While there are a few abysmal exceptions, most of the professors provide instructions on the magical material, then allow the students to wrestle with the content and master it themselves rather than simply handing out the answer, here you go. The active learning model, I have up on the slides just some brief pointers as to what active learning is and can be. Direct instruction is short, gives you just enough to know the theory and understand what the concept is that you're trying to envision and you're trying to work with. And students then experiment on and test the theory through practice and teacher facilitation. Students then reflect on their progress with some teacher guidance. This can be through writing, or it can be self-reflection, teacher talk, or turn and talk, think, pair, share, or some of the tools that some teachers use. And the part that I think is fairly important is open questions and open questioning techniques to encourage thought, so that the students are reflecting on their own work rather than simply saying, oh, I got it wrong, I deserve an F. And I want to start with Professor Flitwick because the poor man does not get a lot of screen time in the books or the films. And as he's often reduced to a bit of comic relief because he often talks in squeaks. The word squeak is fairly used to describe Professor Flitwick, or his legs are dangling from the chair. But really, he is one of the most pedagogically strong teachers in Hogwarts. His approach is to discuss the theory and provide instruction on the mechanics of the charms that he teaches, and then provides the students this space to practice the spell. He steps back and allows the students to experiment, fail, and then ultimately succeed in the application of the spell. He continuously encourages his students to practice their spells in groups and hone their skills cooperatively rather than with his direct intervention. He also assigns homework. Most of the homework that he assigns is practice. Practice that spell. Practice that concept, rather than to punish. He's also had one of the longer tenures at Hogwarts, at least since James Potter's time. We see him moderating an Owls exam in the Pensieve. And there are critics who have analyzed Harry Potter, and specifically through an educational lens, who argue that a long tenure or experience leads to more successful teaching. His experience with both the subject and his teaching skills make him an effective teacher. And he also practices praise. Praise is a very widely debated topic in teaching. Most of the professional development sessions that I've attended have had at least one section on how to apply praise. His use of praise, some teachers think, we use praise too much, like, yay, good job. Others think that praise should be used very sparingly or very directly. And so Flitwick's application of praise reflects his desire to motivate and provide effective feedback to his students, which is critical to a student's growth mindset. Specifically, after Harry's use of the summoning charm during the Triwizard Tournament, he uses the opportunity not only to praise Harry's use of the charm, but also to use him as an example of how to do this charm well. So in order to be effective, praise should be specific and reflective to the student's growth, which Flitwick does in this moment and in others. But what truly sets Flitwick apart from other teachers is his commitment to Hogwarts and his inherent kindness and creativity in the classroom. According to an entry in Pottermore, known as one of the unsung heroes entries, Professor Flitwick is the source of the various decorations in the Hogwarts classroom. His cheery demeanor was also expressed in creativity, I quote. At Christmas, he delighted in making decorations, even enlisting live fairies for the festive fun. He also didn't mind his students play a few cheeky games in his lesson before the Yule Ball. In fact, no matter what his students were up to, Flitwick always has an appreciation of great skill. For instance, when Fred and George Weasley flounced out of Hogwarts, leaving a portable swamp in the corridor, Phileas Flitwick took care to preserve a small puddle when charged to remove it, just because it was a really good bit of magic. No matter what the skill or the experience, a teacher must make a school a welcoming place for students to learn. Decorating a school or letting students play games in the classroom may seem frivolous on the surface, but it speaks to Flitwick's ability to read his students and determine what they need in order to be successful. He makes a critical judgment, knowing that students would not be able to concentrate on any lesson that he gave before such an exciting event as the Yule Ball, and thus let them enjoy themselves and play games instead. He's an effective teacher because he's able to read his students, predict their needs, and meet those needs in the moment, no matter what the schedule or curriculum may dictate. And of course, I have to say hello to Professor McGonagall. Thank you, Kate Glassman. Professor McGonagall is another of many professors that come to mind when encouraging the active learning model. As head of Gryffindor House, she has high expectations of her students. She demands the very best. She is a strict disciplinarian, and she starts her first lesson by transforming a desk into a pig. This is magic that is far beyond the students' abilities as first-year students, but it gives them something to aspire to in their magical practices. It's a moment that says to them, by the time I'm finished with you, you will be able to perform this complex piece of magic. She also holds the fundamental belief that all of her students can learn, even if they have given up on themselves. Yes, you too, Longbottom, she says to a disbelieving Neville. There is nothing wrong with your work except a lack of confidence. And like her namesake before her, Minerva McGonagall's patience and strategic application of discipline is unmatched. The Roman goddess Minerva was synonymous with wisdom and the strategy and tactics of war, as opposed to the chaotic god of war that belonged to Mars. Likewise, McGonagall's demeanor is a strategy that she uses in order to create a balance of fear and respect that her students owe her as a teacher. She has a strict but warm aura that commands respect from her students. Her tactic is to use her disciplined style in order to make sure the students know that she is, quote, not someone to cross. But she's also there to hone them into the best witches and wizards that they can be. She does have brief moments where she favors her Gryffindor students, particularly in house competitions. That is to be expected of a house leader, particularly when her competition does not exhibit the proper sportsmanship either. There are some critics that argue that she should not be showing favoritism and that she should not be pushing for Gryffindor, but frankly, she's the house leader. She can do what she wants. Now, I include both of the potions masters as not non-examples, but examples of opportunities gone by. Both have the potential to be excellent teachers, but they fall short for various reasons. Both begin with the active learning model, but apply it ineffectively. For example, the directions of the potion of the day are magicked onto the blackboard. Students are meant to follow the instructions and make a perfect potion to be corked and graded. That practice in itself is not altogether harmful, but it's ineffective for Hogwarts students thanks to Snape and Slughorn's application in the classroom. Neither teacher allows for many questions or clarifications. Snape is too busy bullying and criticizing students, leaving no room for confidence to ask him for assistance. And Professor Slughorn is too busy praising and molding the right students who will eventually be so grateful for his influence that they will send him presents of crystallized pineapple. Students are then left to clean up their message when the potion goes wrong, wondering why their cauldron has melted. If, for example, Snape and Slughorn had put the directions on the board, then worked with the students to individually and correct their mistakes, or even ask them if they choose to work with the experiment with the potion in a different way, then the students would have had a more beneficial experience with the art of potion making. Slughorn came very close when using creative competition, Slughorn came very close in his use of friendly competition and warmth in the classroom, but his lack of feedback and clarification of complex theories caused him to miss the mark. So for example, Gulpalot's third law. Is anyone able to tell me off the top of their head what Gulpalot's third law is?
The sum of the antidote, an antidote has to be greater than the sum of the antidotes to each of the particular persons.
Wonderful. But would you be able to put that into practice right now? Okay. Great. You are above me then. You are far ahead of me then. So let's say, for example, in that particular situation, Hermione blurts out a rehearsed dictionary definition of Gulpalot's their law, is and everyone's standing around going, wait, what? What is she talking about? What is Gulpalot's their law? I don't understand. But if Slughorn had taken a moment to ask the students if they understood, taken a moment to clarify and question, or ask the students for ways to apply or understand the practical applications and thus use the theoretical concept to build an effective antidote, then perhaps there would have been more success in that particular experiment. Snake's lack of feedback and his unsupportive climate makes for a very psychologically damaging classroom as well. Snape is brilliant in his field, and there are those who state that being brilliant in your field is one of the many markers of being an effective teacher. But he doesn't employ this effectively. He could have easily led his students to experimenting with his potions, as he does in his Marginalia of Libatius Borgia's potion book. And so he's not able to, he never models to how to make a potion for his students, which detracts from the students' needs to see how a perfect potion is made. There's no modeling going on in the potions classroom. No one says, here's what this potion is supposed to look like. Here's what you're supposed to do by the end of class. Okay, try it this way, try it that way. Doesn't do it very well. And I decided to simply, these are simply non-examples of active learning. I do not argue that they are good teachers or bad teachers. I simply say they are not part of the active learning model. You have Professor Binns, who does the lecture style, but there are no checks for understanding. Lecture style is great, especially for those who, that's simply how many people learn, but it's not an active learning model. In my mind, what an active learning model would look like, say, for example, in the Chamber of Secrets episode where everyone's asking about what's going on with the Chamber of Secrets. Wouldn't it be great if Binns had taken out some original manuscripts, primary sources, had everybody look at these different examples of scholars who have interpreted the Chamber of Secrets myth. This document says this document says that, and looked at those different examples of how the Chamber of Secrets myth has formed, rather than simply say, nope, we're talking about facts and facts alone, facts, 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 facts. It's a critical moment that could have been a great teaching opportunity for Binns, but it's lost because he simply wants to stick with the facts, which we all know as true educators and learners, concrete facts are not always concrete. And I see Professor Umbridge as quite literally teaching her to the test. Her job is to teach them the theory, have them read the books, no practical applications. The theory should be enough to pass the OWLs. Her need for control limits her vision to such that she cannot or refuses to imagine a world where students will actually have the need to use these practical models. Her promotion to High Inquisitor further limits learning by stifling the other teachers' practices and interfering with their lessons during her observations or interrogations. Her leadership as High Inquisitor is totalitarian and tight-fisted, which is not an effective learning model. And I'll speak very briefly about Dumbledore in that I like his application specifically in Half-Blood Prince, where he has individual lessons with Harry. He applies an almost Socratic and inductive reasoning questioning process by he asks a question, Harry provides an example, he asks another question, Harry provides a more specific example, which then leads to an ultimate conclusion. They engage in discussion rather than simply saying, here's fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, what did you learn from that? And in my opinion, which is why you're all here listening to me. Effective teachers at Hogwarts use the active learning model to teach students at Hogwarts to use magic and make choices as to when to use said magic on their own. They use question-based practices to give the students room to question, practice, and make their own choices rather than lecturing and learning about the theory, simply memorizing the theory behind the spells. Teachers in the non-magical world should use Professors McGonagall, Flitwick, and Dumbledore to learn how they can effectively practice the active learning model in their own classroom and let their students struggle rather than fall back on simply giving them the answers. Learning takes place with struggle in the Hogwarts classroom, and that is a hard lesson for anyone to learn, teachers or students. Thank you.